Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Rambling Through Everyday Life with Fran and Angela. My name is Fran, and I'm one of the co-hosts for this podcast. You guys, we have got the beloved, amazing, fabulous Grace Valentine on the show this week. We are talking about her new book, all about how to be a better friend. It is a beautiful read for all of us, but I highly recommend it for your high school age, college age girl. All right, sit back, enjoy the show. We love you so much. Grace, we're so glad that you're here. Well, everybody, welcome to another episode of Rambling Through Everyday Life with Fran and Angela. I am grinning, literally not lying. I'm grinning from ear to ear because our new favorite, well, she's not so new. We've had her in our life for a solid year, and I feel like she's the daughter, the beloved, precious friend that we just love so much. Grace Valentine is back on the show. Angela Snyder.
We are so excited to have you, Grace.
Thank you, Fran and Angela. I'm so excited to be here. Sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you already, but I'm so excited. Y'all were one of my favorite. It was so fun in person. My only sad thing is that we're not in person, but I'm thankful for technology, even when technology's hard, that we can all be able to chat even here in the interweb.
Yeah. Who'd have thunk, y'all, who'd have thunk in 2025 we would be giving praise for Zoom because Zoom is still alive. It's still happening. It's still here. And so thankful for that and thankful for you and thankful for this new book that you have written called The Better Friend, 12 Truths to Shift from Shallow and One-Sided Connection to Vibrant Friendships. What a book, Grace Valentine. We have been reading through it, and I told you before we hit record that I will take a group of girls through this book in the fall, but this releases March the 11th. We're so thankful for you. What caused you? I know the answer. I know you're going to say it was my own journey. I felt like I needed to write this, but was that it? Why this book? Why did you do that? Why did you write this?
Wow, you already beat me to the punch. But I think just like anything in our heart, it starts with suffering on our own or an experience that we have dealt with. And when I was, kind of finally hit my mid-20s in Orlando, Florida, I was a single friend. I was trying to figure everything out. There was a lot of comparison in friendships. There was also a lot of friendships changing. And I remember people saying, your friendships don't change. Like friendships will stay the same. And the truth is, as life goes on, friendships do change. Like sometimes you and friends drift apart. Sometimes there is a betrayal. Sometimes there is a need to walk away. And I felt like all my friendships were making me bitter and not better at one point. And that was my own fault. But I was holding records of wrongs, and I always felt like I was a better friend. I felt like I was trying more. I was showing up. I was doing it all. And then they weren't giving me the same love in return. And so honestly, through prayer, through scripture reading, I was trying to understand, when do I walk away? When do I know that I've given too much for a friendship? When do I love harder and I show up and I'm 100% when she can't give me anything? And that's where this book came from. And the idea that, hey, as Christians, you don't need to be walked on all the time. But at the same time, you should live a radically loving life while trusting wisely. And so how can you balance and do both at the same time? How can you protect your heart and guard your heart, but at the same time live this unreasonably loving life that gives grace consistently like Jesus did? And so that's where the book came from.
I love it. I love it so much. I'm already thankful for it so much. Angela and I could talk to you about this for 600 hours, but nobody would listen to a podcast for 600 hours. Okay, Angela, jump in. What do you want to talk to her first about?
Well, first, I want to say, Grace, that I have two 22-year-olds in my home, and they both are big fans of yours, and they are big fans of when I told them you were coming back on the podcast and told them about this book. They were ecstatic because this is where they're sitting in life. Fran and I both have a lot of people in our life who, first of all, you were doing great work. So I want to encourage you just by saying there are actual people that we know who are so excited to hear from you again. So keep going. You're doing amazing. But also their senior year of college, they're getting ready to move on to a career or just graduate and split up. And you've already kind of addressed some of this, but I love that in the book, you're so fun and funny. Your humor is infused through these practical tips and helps that you're giving us. But just help us a little bit, just expand on what makes this hard, and then practically, what do we say to them? How do we encourage them and help them to know that this is normal? And then here's how we walk it out.
Well, first, thanks for encouraging me with all that, and all those girls, I hope they say hi, like, "Hi, I'm love y'all, I wish I could have coffee with all y'all." It's so sweet to think that other people can relate to my stuff because I sometimes feel like I'm just going through it myself. And I even so relate, even like in my late 20s, I moved to Atlanta in a year and a half ago and started over. And it's so vulnerable, no matter your age, whether you're 22, whether you're 16, whether you're 43, whether you have a spouse, whether you're single, like it is such a sensitive topic of feeling like belonging in community. And as you get older, you think that clicks and mean girl stuff stops. And the truth is, it's just a different font, same problem, This shows up a little differently. Like PTA moms can be just as scary as that mean girl lunch table in elementary school. And so, especially when it comes to this book and just what I like my heart for it, and even like throughout the book, I feel like yes, using humor was so important for me. But what was the question? I'm so sorry. I literally my ADD got me.
You're doing great. Just how you used your fun, funny, relatable
Okay, okay,
self
sorry,
to tell us what we're
sorry.
doing. Like you're talking.
Please forgive me.
So Kaylee and Lydia are two of these girls. If you're sitting
Yeah.
down at coffee with Kaylee and Lydia, and they're like, Grace, what is wrong with my life, and what's next for me,
Yes.
and how do I do this?
And I think this generation is like the loneliness generation because of technology being such a big part of our everyday, and also comparison is worse. Like I will say in Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun. Like we have to remember that like the same problems are the same problems generation after generation, but even because of technology, we now see when people hang out without us. We now see that one girl who graduated and got the dream job, is married to the pilot, is living her best life, and has a bachelorette in Italy. And you're like, how can that, where's your wedding going to be after the bachelorette in Italy? And so, what I would say to those girls or just anyone going through that is that, hey, yes, there is a big fight for true friendship in this world. There's a lot of voices, there's a lot of distractions, and you have to decide if you want it. And also, I would say it is a good thing to feel a little awkward and to want good friendships. I think we are scared of, especially girls this day and age, of feeling pathetic and they want to look chill. Like everyone wants to look like they're not trying too hard. Like we think of the romantic comedy. There's that main character. She doesn't want a boyfriend, but the boy likes her. Like, oh, this is crazy. And she's like, I'm not like other girls. Like, I don't know why he wants me. And then she ends up happily ever after. And so there's such a lack of admitting that you want these things and realizing that these are holy desires. It is holy to want a relationship that reflects God when you're in your mid 20s or your late 20s or even in your 40s. Like it is holy to want friendships that care for you, that don't make you question your worth. But you have to realize that yes, it's a holy desire, but also community is something I have to create. That there is no young life leader for being 30. Like there is no like middle age pastor. There's pastors, but there's no someone trying to create like a young single community for people in their 30s, really, in your hometown. And so you have to go out and create the community you create. And you have to realize that community isn't just finding your four best friends. I also think at the young adults, especially in all ages, we seek best friendships, but without realizing that that's how we choose clicks over community. Like when you seek community over click, you're going to naturally have some best friendships, but you're not just seeking for best friends. You're going to have bridesmaids like friends and also dance floor like friends. That you need both. You need to have the best friends, but you also need people who would celebrate and care for you if you're going through something hard or great. And so it's so important, especially at that ripe age of 22, to realize like, hey, you're going to have to create this community and you have to wrestle with it. And it's a good thing to want this, and you don't need to feel ashamed for it.
That's so good. That's so good. Okay, Grace, I want to say two things and then I want to make a comment. And if you want to address this comment, you can skip right past it. This is my own personal thought.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's woven in the book here, but I'm going to make a comment and then I want us to talk about the three types of friendships that you mentioned within that community
Yeah.
that's created, because I loved that so much and just kept thinking, I cannot wait to talk to students about this. But let me just say this. I think that because if people that know you online or in person, they're making a decision about you based on the fact that just who you are, what you do, the personality that you have. They are saying Grace must be just confident all the time. Grace must just have all these friends all the time. Grace has probably never struggled with friendship because she is an extrovert. She's always putting herself out there. And I cannot tell you how many college student girls come to me and they say, people are thinking that I've got all these friends, but actually I don't. And they're making that assumption because I've got this big, loud personality. And I think, man, that's an interesting observation. It's an interesting place to have to live as a college student. So because I think that could be said of you. I think that could be said of you.
Mhm.
If you want to make any comment about that, great. But then I also want to talk about those three types of friends for a second too.
No, and that's so true. And there was a time when I was living in Orlando, and also all my friends had gotten married. Everything was changing, and then naturally, people wanted to do double dates with the other ones in relationships. And I became this a little bit of a green-eyed monster. I was jealous of their life stage. I was jealous of their financial stage. The fact that they had two incomes in one house, amazing. That makes things a lot easier. I looked at it like that would fix everything. Not true, but that's the way I looked at it. And also, I feel like I was constantly introducing people, and then they would become best friends, and they would leave me in the dust because were in a similar life stage. They both had boyfriends. They both had this, and so I had a moment where I was like, "Wow, I can get a lot of likes on Instagram, but I can't find someone to hang out with me on Saturday night. Like that feels very hard."
Mm.
And it was a weird season where I then started just creating. I was like, "Okay, I feel so left out." I would just meet someone. I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to chili cook off. You want to come?" And it'd be the most random group of people, and that made it so much better. And I had to be vulnerable enough to be like, "Hey, will you want to get lunch with me?" And I'm sure some people thought, Grace wants to get lunch with me. Like, doesn't she have a lot of friends? Doesn't she have a lot of followers? But the truth is that I didn't have anything. So I had to be vulnerable enough to say, "Hey, I'm not like too good for a new friendship. And if anything, I need new friendships." I joined a life group at my church, and here I am with people, and I'm like, "What's your job?" "Oh, I travel, speak, I talk to girls for a living, give them advice." Yet I need to be sitting here with a bunch of people I just met in an awkward setting where we talk about our highs and lows
Mm.
first, and it made me so much better. And so there was a moment where I felt like I had to protect the image, and I think that's what a lot of other people in this generation feel like, that we have to protect this image because we don't want to disappoint them. I even think when my mom calls, I'm not the girl who tells my mom everything that's going wrong. Like, there's two types of girls out there. There's the ones who's like, "Mom, this person looked at me the wrong way. This is all." I want to protect and be this like perfect daughter for her because I don't want to disappoint her. But then that's never going to help me become closer to my mom. That's never going to help me find these things if I don't admit what I'm struggling with. And I also think my biggest fear is being misunderstood. And sometimes I don't know if this y'all relates to this at all. When I'm really loud or I'm super extroverted, it can be out of being confident or being insecure. That sometimes it is my response when I feel like no one is talking. So I ramble. Like I like, "Nice to meet you. How's it going? Do you want to do this?" And then they won't ask me any questions because I am just talking 20 times a second. And that's just an insecurity. So people think it's confidence, but it's mask insecurity. And I have to be honest with myself about that in order to
Yeah.
grow as a human.
Well,
Listen,
welcome to the podcast called
oh,
Rambling.
listen, Angela and I have a running joke with one person in our life. That's what we do. We just become absolutely like a 9-year-old that's ridiculous, that just starts talking about nothing because it's so strange and we don't know what we're doing. And we become so,
That's so real.
yeah, it's so awful. Okay, let's talk about these types of friendships. Friendship of utility or necessity, friendship of pleasure, and my absolute favorite, friendship of goodness. Let's talk about that. Elaborate on that a little bit, because I think this is not new to people, but I think the language that you're giving it is.
Mm.
So let's break that down a little bit so that people can understand the difference in them. And then what do we do with that? Whether that's me or, like I'm being that type of friend, or I find myself in that type of friendship.
Yeah, so Aristotle wrote this, like in one of his books of ethics, about how we have three different types of friendships. And when I read this, I remember being like, wait, this explains why I'm constantly feeling disappointed because I'm expecting a friendship of necessity to act like a friendship of goodness. And so I'm like, why didn't they do anything for my birthday? I'm like, oh, wait, we're not actually at that level yet. Like, we haven't broken the barrier. And so when I think about disappointment in friendships, especially, like understanding the level that you're at with someone helps you to know, hey, I need to grow this friendship, or hey, we're not there yet, or hey, this is just a friendship that needs to stay in this pocket because being around them more often will only make me worse. And so it's friendship of convenience or necessity or utility. Those are the three words used interchangeably. And those friends are the ones that you just kind of need to have. Like it might be your neighbor. Like you don't want your neighbor and you to have tiffs over the yard. So it's a necessity. You're friends with them. It might be a coworker. It might be even someone at your church who your kids go to the same class, but you don't actually talk about anything. And you just kind of need to be friends with them because your kids are kind of friends and it's just convenient to be friends with them. Then it's friendships of pleasure. And those are ones that you have something that you like to do that's fun. Like it brings fun to your life. It doesn't mean that it's deep. So that could be a friend who you like to work out with. That could be a friend also in your Sunday school class who you'd ever hang out with besides that. It could be a friend that you share recipes with. It could be an online friend that you don't even ever meet in person. Like everyone has that sometimes, which is creepy, but we all do it. And then there's friends of goodness. And those are friends that actually make you better and lead you to God's goodness. And so obviously Aristotle didn't say God's goodness, but that's the way that I take it. It's friendship of goodness are the people who would be there for you, they'd celebrate with you, they'd mourn with you, and they bring good to your life. And the goal and understanding of our friends is like if you don't have friends of goodness, you're going to miss out on true community because that is where you're actually changed and known. Like that is where you feel known and loved. And Tim Keller has that great quote about how our biggest fear is, being like either known and not liked or known and not loved. And like at the end of the day, we all deeply desire to feel deeply known and deeply loved. And friends of goodness will do that for you. But especially I've seen in whether it's young girls, whatever it is, that we get to the point where we get mad at our friends when they're not acting like a friends of goodness, but we almost need to take inventory about our own friends and say, like, who's at this level? And when I was in seasons where I didn't have friends of goodness, I had to look, I'm like, who are my friends of pleasure and my friends of convenience that I can try to take to the next level? That like I can be like, hey, can we hang out after this? Can we do this instead of even like in college, a lot of girls have party friends. Like you're never going to become better because you're going to SAE together in a crop top. Like, but if you say, hey, let's go to brunch together on Saturday morning, let's have a deeper talk, let's go to church. Suddenly you're shifting the friendship setting, which helps you shift potentially the deeper meaning of the friendship.
That's so good. You say in the book that friendships of goodness take patience and initiative. And I love that because the patience part, well, both parts of that, like you've got to hang in there. It's not just going to magically pop up one day and there it is. And so for the younger you are, I think that can be a bit of a challenge because you just want the friendship. You just automatically want to arrive. And I love that you said that. The other thing that you said in here too, that man, we could do a whole nother episode on this. You said you will never be fully known if you don't first know yourself enough to admit you're lonely and do something about it. And sitting in that space of I'm ready to take the friendship of necessity or the friendship of pleasure to the next level. Like you've got to be willing to say, I need that and be comfortable enough to say that and to take that next step. And that's where girls, even my age, we just get scared and we're like, no, I'll go back to being comfortable. And then, 2 seconds later, complain about the fact that I don't have the friendship of goodness.
And I think it is such a vulnerable place. And I think we always assume that loneliness is a bad feeling. Like we feel lonely and we're like, oh no, the enemy, like he's lying. But the truth is sometimes it can be the enemy either lying so that you don't see the community you have, or it can be God just being like, hey, you were not created to be alone. Like go get friends. And so I had to stop being like, oh, my loneliness is a lie. Sometimes I was lonely. Sometimes I really didn't have anyone. Sometimes I was just watching Friends on Netflix and never meeting my own friends or having friends. And so I had to channel and realize loneliness isn't a bad feeling. It's a reminder from God that I'm meant to find community to make me better. I need friends of goodness in my life. Like two are better than one, and I'm missing out on being better if I'm always alone. And so it's important to not kind of make yourself feel like it's always a bad thing to feel lonely. It's a reminder, hey, I should step out of the box. Like if anyone's ever grieved the loss of someone before, like a family member, yes, you think you want to be alone, but then when you're actually with someone who cares for you well, you realize maybe I didn't want to be alone. Like that was maybe just a safety mechanism. So I didn't have to talk about it. I didn't have to process it. And I needed to be alone maybe for a little bit, but then I really need to be around people who are going to help me see God's goodness. And so you have to always seek the better.
It's so good. Okay, so Grace, when we find these people and it's going really well and we're living life with them, inevitably at some point some conflict will arise. If we're really not just living on the surface. And I love how you talk about this and how we have to live in unity and fight for unity. And you give some really good practical steps. You talk about how, well, I'll just start the first one. I mean, that you just go deep quickly, but sharing sin you're struggling with. How does that help us in our friendships?
Yeah, well, I mean, confession is something talked about consistently by Jesus and in the Bible for a reason. It's because if you want the enemy to get worried about how he's attacking you, you have to just confess like what you're doing. Like when you bring that to light of what you feel like you're being targeted on, that is when you can be that. And I see a lot of even my own life, I've had friends too where they were friends of pleasure and then I've confessed and then we laugh at our sin, right? Like everyone's been there. They weren't friends of goodness. And so I had my party friends, and I'm like, "Oh, I kissed this boy. I did this wrong thing," and then we're all laughing. We're like, and there's a difference between growing and becoming better with a friend and laughing at your sin. So it is very important. Scripture warns us, like, "Hey, make sure you are confessing your sins, not laughing at your sins. Like, don't laugh at what the Lord warns at." And so I think I had to reevaluate certain friends in my life and say, and sometimes I was that bad friend for the record. Sometimes I was that friend and be like, "Give yourself a break." Like, oh my gosh, we've all had those bad days, but I had to take inventory. How can I be a better friend and not laugh at sin, but help someone feel conviction and called up and not out? And also, how can I do that and lead in that way and show that in my own life and mourn with what the Lord mourns at?
You
Mm.
also talk about honest check-ins. Like what are some practical steps or when we've got these girls listening who are like, okay, I've got this
Mm.
friend, we're at that level, we both love Jesus, we're in small group together. But when they're sitting at coffee, like what are some talking points just to get them started to take it to the next
Yeah.
level?
Well, I have a friend right now, especially. She just had a baby. Maybe she just got done with maternity leave, so she's back at work. It's like very dependent on two incomes right now, and so I texted her. I've been like, it's one of those things where I'm like, I have to chase her down right now, and that's my way of honest check in because she's got a lot on her plate. Like she has a baby, she has a full time job. I have to be prepared to like, hey, I might be giving 90. Like friendship is never 50-50. So sometimes these honest check ins are you going 80, realizing, hey, my friend's going through a hard season. She's not going rogue. She's not ghosting me. She's just very overwhelmed. And I have to fit around her schedule in that moment because, hey, she is busy. There's multiple things. And I finally got her and she goes, I'm honestly really struggling. Like it has been really hard. And I've tried to get her on the phone and I still can't. It's one of my best friends. So I know I'm assuming the best. I'm not thinking she's ghosting me. Even today, I'm sending her a Chick-fil-A meal. Like, there's just little things like that that help someone feel seen first because sometimes before someone can be open to you about what's going on, they need to feel seen and loved. Just even if it's someone who you've seen and loved for years and years, like this is the friend I've known since I was 14. But I have to consistently show her, hey, I know I haven't forgotten that you said it was hard. Like it is Wednesday. I am still checking it. Like, and you may not have time for a phone call, but I am somehow showing you that I care. And when you're ready to talk, we're gonna do that. So I think just creating a space with your friendships where you're willing to chase someone down, where you're willing to drive 4 hours to be with them if something hard happens, where you're willing to say, hey, you just had a baby and now you're back at work. That is hard. And if you can't text me back, that's okay. You'll get an Uber Eats message though. Like, and it'll be at your door and you'll be great because it's dinner and you need that. And then you'll think to text me too, but know that I care and see. And so, especially with honest check ins, it's asking genuine questions that are not surface level. Because I think as young women, we can, and especially any age woman, we can be really shallow with our questions. We can be like, oh my gosh, how's it been? How'd you decorate the nursery? And those are cute questions to ask. But you could say, like, how long is your parental leave? Like, how long do you have? Are you nervous? I even look at this friend. I'm like, I know that you have a really boss job. Like, are you nervous for this? Like, what can I do? It's your first day back. Like, how can I check in on you? And then she does the same things for me when I'm going through seasons. That same friend is the one who, when I was struggling with a guy I didn't even date, I was crying about it one day. She like sent me a cake from Cheesecake Factory from Uber Eats. And I didn't want to talk to her about it because I'm like, I'm being a girl. I'm crying about a guy I didn't even date. And she's chasing me down too. And so that's what it is. It's about that chasing someone down and saying, hey, when you're ready, I'm here. But no matter what, I see and love you on this Monday, on this Wednesday, on this Thursday afternoon.
That's so good. The very last chapter of the book is titled Leave People Better. That is wonderful in theory and really hard to do in the complexity and the beauty of different types of friendships. I'm going to read through just quickly these 7 truths that you put at the end of this
Mm.
chapter. If there's anything in there that you want to speak into, I would love for you to maybe choose one. And then I want to do a lovely, horrible transition into this reminders about avoiding gossip.
Mm.
because that just is a killer. Comparison is a killer. All of it can just destroy everything. But gossip, I don't know that I think have outgrown it, but I can still be, a 20-year-old super quick and get all stirred up about
Mhm.
all kinds of things. Okay. So this is what you say at the end of the final chapter titled Leave People Better. These are 7 truths about healthy friendships. And these are just so beautiful. Number 1, healthy friendships are more than possible. Number 2, healthy friends are teammates, not competitors. Number 3, healthy friends fiercely pray for each other. Number 4, healthy friends share laughter. Number 5, healthy friends avoid gossip and seek purity. Number 6, healthy friends live on mission with you. And finally, healthy friends are those you trust to speak kindly and honestly about you in rooms you are not in. You may decide to wrap all that up with one of those and gossip, but like Grace, we could just do episode after episode after episode for each one of those. What in there stands out to you? Like this is just a burden maybe that you have today, or this particular one means
Mm.
so much to you. Elaborate on any of those if you can.
Yeah, and the last one about how you trust healthy friendships or people you trust in rooms you're not in to speak kindly about you, because it is so easy to want someone to speak kindly to your face, but to know if this girl is with my ex-boyfriend in like a random work event, I know she has my back in those conversations. Like I don't have to doubt it. I don't have to question it. If she's with someone who has misunderstood me, like she'll still love that person well, but she will care for me well. And I think that peace you get is like when you realize, hey, God is a God author of peace and not confusion. I'm not confused whose team she's on. She's on the Lord's team, not mine. And so therefore, she has my back and will be kind to me in the rooms I'm in and not. And we've all experienced that betrayal of someone who we thought was really kind to us. And then we realize, wait, I don't feel like she's got my back. And then we hear something and then we get really hurt. And there's nothing worse than feeling like that not even that someone was unkind to you in your face, but that when you didn't even have a chance to stand up for yourself. And in that last chapter too, I love my grandma is one of my best people, like best friends. She's amazing. And what I love about my grandma is she has a good girl group. Like they don't have any forms of communication other than they walk across the street and they aren't afraid to also trust each other. So my grandma is going Blanche's macular generation, and she's not afraid to be like, hey, Judy, I need a ride to the grocery store. I need groceries. I can't drive. You're driving. Like, I have an appointment in Valdosta. Let's go. 40 minutes away. And they do it for each other. They don't complain. Like, they don't feel like a burden to ask for help. And they also don't feel like the other person is a burden when they ask for help. They're willing to be there for each other. And I even think my grandma had a friend named Miss Vicky, and this lady was the one who would post everyone on Facebook. Like you go to the restaurant at the sandwich shop that's cheap, and it is an event. Like she is making an event out of everything. And I think we have forgotten to live that way as friendships. That taking the little moments we bump into each other and making a big deal about that, taking the phone call we get and not holding records of wrong. Miss Vicky would message me 10 times, and I would message her back 3, and then she would never hold that against me. She never was like, I'm trying harder. She was still just trying to love people well. And so I especially think when it comes to that, like trusting your friends, it's also about receiving that too. Like receiving that trust and being willing to be vulnerable in that. Like, hey, I trust them and I want them to trust me with their burdens. It's not baggage. It is their burdens that the Lord carries, and I get to point them to the Lord. And so we see that I even researched, and the elderly are believed to have sometimes better friendships in general. And the elderly live longer when they have better friendships. So I think even with all this technology distracting us, we forget to be vulnerable and have that trust in friendships. And we should look at the people who are years older and how they're doing it right.
Oh, I love that. I love that you have your grandmother in your life. No telling the amount of wisdom. What do you call your grandmother, Grace?
The Momo. I think I've always said it wrong. So I think it's supposed to be mama. And then I guess I was like Momo. And I'm like,
Oh,
Momo. Like,
oh,
everyone's like,
precious.
are you stuttering?
No, it's just precious. You have a lot to learn from her. I'm so thankful that you
Mm,
have her. Okay, Ephesians 4:29. You quote this at the end. One of the oh my, just we should read this every day. Uh,
mm.
of our lives. Ephesians 4:29 says, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." Grace, you're a different human being than you were in college. I've heard you share your story.
Mm,
I love the fact that I've heard you say, every day you get to rewrite your story. You get to rewrite your
mm,
reputation. And I have a feeling, I'm not going out on a limb here, but that Grace has grown a lot from college to now. When it comes to unwholesome talk coming out of these young girls'
mm.
mouth, maybe in the disguise of trying to fit in and be a friend, and it's terrible, it's not good, and they probably know that verse. That's probably not something that they're like, "Oh, I've never heard that before." Um, what could you say to these girls when it comes to, as they're growing in these college years and young adult years, and I know for any of us, like, what would you
Mm.
say to them about considering that unwholesome talk and just your own journey, your own experience? How can you encourage them in that?
Yeah, every time I've had an unwholesome talk, whether it's about someone, whether even if it was just the language I use, I have to look at what explains it, even though it doesn't excuse it. So there's things that explain it, and a lot of times it goes back to insecurity. Like an insecure you makes a bad friend. An insecure you creates bad gossip, creates bad vibes. An insecure you isn't a good daughter. An insecure you is going to bring out the worst in other people. And I had to realize a lot of times when, especially with gossip, it's my own insecurity, and I have to be grossed out by that. Like I've had to admit it out loud too, because we see a lot of girls in a group chat not afraid to like screenshot someone to tear it apart. And I've done that with friends too. When, especially way back in my younger years of being like, why did this girl post this? Oh my gosh, because we're in a feed where we constantly see things. Or the classic, did this girl get a divorce? Like that is like and you're mid-20s. You're like, whatever happened? I think her last name changed. And that's doing no good for anyone. Like that isn't adding any value. And it's usually your own insecurity that brings that out into all unwholesome talk. So when I look back at college Grace or just Grace before she had confidence, I see a lot of that unwholesome talk. And I have to realize that yes, some of those things may have been, did the girl get a divorce? Did this happen? They may have been true, but was it kind? Like, was it lovely? Was it just? Was it fruitful? Like, did it bring anyone closer to Jesus? No. And was it my place to say anything? No. So I think we also forget unwholesome talk doesn't mean that it's incorrect. Like, it can still be true, but not wholesome because it's not bringing anything of value. And we forget that with gossip because we're like, well, that did happen. Like, that is what happened. And the truth is, you don't have the full story. You have one picture of someone's life. Like, God has a helicopter view, He can see it all. He sees what explains it, why they did this. And it is not your job and not your role. And whenever I do it, I now try to take inventory. And then I have to once again confess to my friend and say, hey, honestly, the reason I was really talking about that girl's outfit is because lately I feel like I'm always dressing weird. I don't have the confidence to try new trends. And so I was making fun of her weird nails or doing this because of my own insecurity. And I need to confess that to you. And when you create that trend in your friendships too, where you do that, you'll call each other up naturally. Because I think so many times you think, okay, if someone is gossiping in my friend group, then you just say, hey, you shouldn't gossip. That was really mean. But the truth is, that's not going to do anything good. Like, what has to do is an inventory check in your own heart first and say, why did I join in? Why did I do this? And I've had moments where I had the friend who consistently gossiped. And then naturally I would gossip with her. And I had to approach her and say, hey, I want to apologize. When we were talking about this, I said some really mean, hurtful things. And I regret that. Can you hold me accountable? Can we try to be better? And I'm making it about my sin and asking her to join in on this and not making it about calling her out. And that's the best thing you can do for that unwholesome talk. And I think just remembering unwholesome talk can still be true, but not kind. And it can be what you think happened, but it doesn't add any value to anyone.
Girl, Angela, she is bringing a word.
She sure is. And I love that because, we've talked about objects in motion stay in motion. It's the same with this.
Mm,
When you turn that train around and go, okay, you know what? I'm going to own this. Will you help me? Then it's real easy. And oftentimes, it's that positive peer pressure because the other friends in the room are like, oh, good. I didn't really feel comfortable or I just need to be held accountable for going down the negative road.
mm.
There's just so much strength in numbers.
Well, I think you are an absolute rock star, Grace Valentine. And
Absolutely.
I think this book, I Angela's heard me say this, and I don't say it often. I really don't. I promise you I don't say it often. there's a handful of books that I say should be mandatory reading, and this should be one of them. Um, I think
Oh,
I think I think you could even start like 8th grade, definitely high school,
mm,
definitely college and young adult. It should be. And what a gift you are to be so vulnerable in your storytelling, your personal stories throughout the book, and just the challenge, but it doesn't feel overwhelming. It feels like we can do this. We can be better friends. We can be better
mm.
women supporting one another. So, I mean, bravo to you, sister. That what a gift you have given us.
That is so kind. And I just want to thank y'all. Y'all are doing so much. I love y'all do this podcast where you pour into people, but I also love seeing y'all on social media and what y'all do one on one with people. Like y'all are meeting with girls. Y'all care for people so well right where you are. And you'll have jobs. Like you're all busy, but you still are never too busy to live a loving life. And I think that's something anyone can admire and anyone can hopefully strive to be like, because you're going to be the best version of yourself and a really great friend when you're living a loving life for people who are your friends and even people who are younger girls in your life. And even me. So thank y'all for what y'all do.
Oh, you're amazing. Okay, how can people get the book? How do you want people to order the book?
Yes, if you're listening to this on March 10th, the last day to pre-order, you can also pre-order on Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, Target. You can go to my Instagram at the Grace Valentine, and you can also enter on my Instagram on my pinned post a giveaway to win a $1,500 Airbnb girls trip. It just has to be used for girls trip, so you can't bring any boys, only girls. That's the rule. So you're like, oh, this would be great for me, my husband's anniversary. Wrong, it's not for that. So you can enter that if you pre-order. So you have one day to do that. You're listening to this on release day. And then after that, yeah, just go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Please message me if you listen to this podcast and let me know if you end up getting the book so I can respond. I try to like look, maybe do an all caps rambling. I'll be like, oh, I ramble. Oh, wait, my girl's rambling. So,
Love
and
it.
then yeah, check me out on Instagram at the Grace Valentine. You can see my encouragement there. That's kind of based off the books.
Yeah.
Grace,
Well,
how can we and our listeners, how can we all pray for you? Because you're doing such a great job encouraging young people, encouraging us as the mamas to even know how to relate to them and what struggles
Mm.
they face. So how can we pray for you as you do what you do so well?
Y'all are so kind. I remember you asked me this last time and y'all even like texted me in to check on that. And that means so much. I think I'm at this point, I'm in my late 20s. Just being present where I am, because I think naturally when you hit your late 20s, you start being like, do I need to like have kids tomorrow? Do I need to like immediately run to the chapel? Like, do I need, and so it's so easy for me to get distracted of what I think I need to do when I should be present right where the mission God has for me. That I have great opportunities. I don't need to think I'm doing something wrong. I need to be content with where the Lord has me. And so that's just probably my biggest prayer is to just know that like the Lord's timing will be great for all those things, that I don't need to be in a rush. At the same time, I have a lot of great things in my life that I can be thankful for, but to not overthink that.
mm, girl, we are praying for you. We are some of your biggest fans. And as older women, old enough to be your mama, we will always be cheering you
I
on.
don't think you're old enough to be my mama. I do not think that's true.
I am. I have a 28-year-old, Grace. So yes,
Oh, you are.
I am
Well, you
literally.
look so good. I
So,
never even thought that. On the
mm.
next episode of Rambling, I need to hear your skincare routine then. So
Oh, you guys, we are so grateful for Grace Valentine and so thankful for this conversation with her today. We encourage you, if you are listening on release day, to do exactly what she said to do as far as ordering the book. But no matter what, order the book, The Better Friend, 12 Truths to Shift from Shallow and One-Sided Connections to Vibrant Friendships. Thank you, Grace Valentine. We love you guys. Thanks for listening and have a great week. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for being on the show this week, Grace Valentine. We adore you. All right, get the book today. Maybe it's something that you and your daughter could read together, a small group of girls, any age, you and your own friends. Everybody needs to read this book. You can find all the info on gracevalentine.org or look for her on Instagram, The Grace Valentine. All right. Thanks so much for listening, you guys. Have a fantastic week. We love you so much.